All right. So today is the second day of our Aikido for the Mind workshop. And yesterday we talked about the concept of self-defense and having tools that allow us to defend ourselves from exterior threat. Today we're going to talk about techniques that allow us to deal with emotions. And I came across a lady, her name is Tara Brach. Tarabrack, Tara Brach. And she's a well-known American psychologist and trauma therapist. And she's also into holistic healing, and she's a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher. So she's very compatible or coherent with the stuff that we do here. Tara Brach. And she came with a technique that is called RAIN. RAIN. And RAIN is an acronym, and it stands for 4 different words. The R stands for recognize. The A stands for allow or accept. The I is for investigate. So the I is for investigate, and the N is for nurture. So it's a 4-step process that we have to familiarize ourselves with, and that allows us to deal with emotions as we experience them in the moment. And what is very common for us is to usually just have our emotions and shove them under the carpet. Just not be in connection with our own emotions. We kind of ignore them until the bucket flows over, and then of course we blow up, and then there is all kinds of, we have a mental breakdown, or we have an anger attack or something like that. So with RAIN, the first thing is to recognize the fact that we are having a specific emotion. And this is all in regards to negative emotions. You shouldn't do RAIN when you're having a great time. And I always use the analogy of watching your child. And if you see your kid running around and you see him upset or her upset, the first requirement obviously would be to recognize that. And if you're on your phone 24/7, then you wouldn't see that your kid is upset. Or if you wouldn't have sufficient consciousness, awareness, and mindfulness, you wouldn't see that. The same thing for us. If you're just in the daily treadmill rat race of life, then often we are not in touch and not conscious of the emotions that we're having in a moment. So the first step is to recognize, and you go like, oh, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling disappointed, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling guilty. As we go through all the other exercises that we're doing, obviously, when working on relationship with self, as that relationship becomes better and stronger, obviously we will have the ability to more easy recognize the emotions that we're having in that moment in time. You can anticipate on that and go a couple of times during the day when you have a moment of relaxation or after a meal, or you can ask yourself, hey, how are you doing? Or what are you feeling right now? Kind of checking up on yourself. Everything stands or falls with the first step, because if you are not conscious, then you wouldn't recognize that you have a specific emotion, and then obviously you can't do the following steps because you wouldn't know that something's going on. This takes a lot of practice and as I mentioned before, and consciousness. But you could do that on a regular basis. When I go to bed, before I really close my eyes, I ask myself, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Is there any predominant negative emotions that are festering around in my head? I do like a check, do like a rain check. The next step is allow and accept. Allow or accept. And again, you look at your child running around and you see he's upset. How are you going to react to that? Yeah, of course you're gonna tell him, hey, come here, and you're gonna, you're not gonna slap him on the head and go, don't be such a girl or whatever. You're gonna accommodate him, and you're gonna ideally allow him or her to be in that moment with their emotions, which is not often the case. When we were growing up, we were not always allowed to be with our emotions. You're a boy, don't cry. Boys don't cry. That was like a very repetitive statement when I grew up. Boys don't cry. So you just consciously suppress all these emotions of emotional pain or anger or frustration or any of that. And it becomes a habit that's been instilled in us from very young age. Just to tell yourself, I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling whatever it is. Or it could be a mix of several of the emotions that I just mentioned. Mixed bag of emotions. And just to sit in that moment and allow yourself to have them, that is very liberating. And also an act of profound kindness towards self. Which is very counterintuitive for us, because this is something we've not been doing. And in the beginning, it feels very weird to go there and to practice these steps. Even a bit uncomfortable and counterintuitive. But you just do it and see and reap the benefits afterwards. That was a great breakthrough when I allowed myself to sit with specific emotions, especially anger and frustration, actually all of them, but the ones that you kind of feel that you shouldn't have. You're Buddhist, you shouldn't be angry, or something that comes in your mind, like that suppresses that emotion, that you're not allowed to feel it. Everybody's allowed to feel whatever they feel. And just sit with that in a moment of contemplation, in a moment of support and accommodation. And again, keep referring to that image of you comforting a child. The first thing you want to do is recognize it, call the kid over, hug him, and say, oh, it's okay, it's okay. you're crying or you're upset or whatever, that's okay. Yeah. Let it be as in that emotion. The third step is we want to know what's going on. And you're going to ask the kid, hey, what happened? Why are you feeling this way? And now we come to a very critical point, because if you ask yourself, why are you feeling this way? Then it's always in relation to something that caused it. And then you're kind of pointing fingers. Oh, it was my sister that whatever hit me or took my toy or... And in the last couple of months, I came to some conclusion that there is a better question to ask, which is actually, what are you feeling, rather than why are you feeling that? And put the emphasis on the emotion rather than on what caused it. And that just changed the dynamics completely. Because if you ask why, it instantly becomes a blaming game. She did it, he did it. And that's never a very healthy environment. And it takes away the focus to actually what's going on emotionally. Now it's kind of cause and effect. So this is something I really marked down here. Ask what instead of why. Especially in that order. Put the emphasis on really what is going on. And then you have a better understanding of the dynamics also, more broadband, because you could take some responsibility for it, and you can go, I'm feeling this way because actually I'm hypersensitive, or, rather than just plainly blaming somebody for causing that emotion. And the fourth step is the step of compassion and nurturing, metta, loving kindness towards self. And it's the same thing you do as a parent. You comfort your child. And you nurture it, and you go like, hey, that's okay, it's fine, things will be better, it's not gonna last long, it's, temporary, whatever. Some story you come up with. So this is the whole practice of rain. And it seems simple. It's not a very complicated practice. But when I started applying it and practicing it, I found out that to be very, very, very effective and almost instantaneous relief and comfort, and just this kind of feeling of, now I can do something with it. I can recognize it. I can take the time to investigate what's the dynamics behind it. How am I really feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Take some responsibility for that. without always blaming others, and also not always blaming ourselves. Just go, okay, because of my condition, because of my hypersensitivity, because of trauma, because of other dynamics. And then to always do that kind of, cradling or hugging. In the step of allowing and accepting, maybe once in a blue moon I get angry with something. It happens. Not very often, but it does happen. And then I usually stand up and I go to the back and I just shout. Just shout or curse or whatever as loud as I can. And if you don't want anybody to hear you, you do it in a pillow and just get all that anger and that frustration out rather than to direct it to somebody else. Just vent it, void it. It's the same thing when you're suddenly overwhelmed with other emotions and you feel like crying, and you can just go to your room or whatever and just cry for a couple of minutes and then shake it off with your Swiss Saint Bernard and come back and go, okay, continue.
Is that in the allow and accept?
Yes. It's to emphasize on the fact to really allow you to have that emotion and sit with that. Our instant reaction would be just to suppress it or to shove it under the carpet or turn out or run away from it or anything else other than accommodating for it. We never really have been allowed to sit with our emotions, because if you get angry, then either you suppress it yourself, or other people go like, oh, it's okay, don't be angry, don't get upset, don't get angry. But I am upset, and just to have that moment of minutes to just go, and I shake it off, and then sit down and do some investigation, do some, and not always with the stick, because every time we have done some kind of an episode with negative emotions, then we feel guilty about the fact that we had them, and then we create this ongoing perpetuum, which doesn't work or doesn't help us either. So in the evening we will listen to a workshop from Tara Brach over, I think it's over 4 days or over 5 days. And she will explain this again from her. I mean, she's the inventor of rain, so, and she will give some examples about how that worked for her personally and how it has worked for people that she counseled or she guided. It's an interesting workshop. So we have to distinguish between Byron Katie, which is more like a defense mechanism, as in I'm going to shield myself from negative input, negative compulsive thinking, self-defense from the monkey, or self-defense from external negative sources, and do it in a conscious way, as in, sorry, you're not allowed. This thought is not allowed. It's not valid. You don't have credentials to be roaming around in my head. to be conscious of what is going on, to be selective of the things that, for example, as we said yesterday, whose business is that, to ignore thinking about stuff that is not really your business, that you don't get emotionally involved there and get carried away with all the stuff where it's not even your business, or you can't do anything about it. So for many years we only had Byron Katie, and Byron Katie works, but it's a steep entry curve. There's a steep learning curve, but it works well, but you need to practice it a lot and be very conscious and actively involved with it, and then it works. And then we discovered Tara Brach a couple of years ago, and that is just, these two techniques together are absolutely amazing, life-changing. And as you go, especially now, through the second week of trauma treatment and EMDR treatment, there's a lot of emotions that come up. So it's the perfect time and a perfect environment for you to start testing your brain skills.
Can it be sort of a cycle? Going through those steps with rain?
Well, it is kind of a cycle, and it's cyclic. Because these emotions come and go, and you deal with them, and they diminish and disappear and dissipate, and then they resurface. And then you have to do that again. So it's very possible that you have to do a rain several times on a similar trigger or a similar topic, sure. Yeah. What I found personally is that the sequence is very important, and that you always incorporate all the steps if you want to use it to its maximum effect. That you not only investigate or not only allow or not only nurture.
Get self-pity a bit.
I personally believe that there is a time and a place for self-pity also, because self-pity is pity, is empathy towards self, is compassion towards self. And we have to obviously be careful with that, but there's another emotion that I sometimes allow, that I just feel very sorry for myself, and then I just sit there and cry basically and feel sorry for myself, but I allow that. And then also you shake it off and you go like, okay, come on, get over it. But any of these emotional states, you don't want to have them prolonged. Ideally, you want to be over and done with that whole phase, like in an hour or so, or two, which is unheard of, because usually we stay in that state for hours, for days, for weeks. And remember what Joe Dispenza said about these different prolonged states of negative emotions. This is also under the common denominator of PG, actually. And it's very interesting to recognize that this is the part of the board of directors that is there to comfort you, to be your parental guidance, PG, or to have the function of an older brother or an older sister. And it's very soothing to have that in-house capability now to do that for yourself. That you're not deprived of it when you don't have access to a close friend or parents or an older brother or sister, and then you're deprived of that option. Now it's in-house. Any other questions on this topic? It's pretty straightforward stuff. Mark very clearly that the question what instead of why. I found that to be changing the whole dynamics of the rain. Before it was more like why, and then it always ends up with pointing fingers at something or somebody.